very warm welcome to Campus Sports 3.0. I'm your co-host for this short little Wednesday night catch-up. And we've got two stories to talk about, two that I want to discuss them in the most logical, most relaxed, most pleasant way possible. But I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it's going to get us a little bit annoyed. There's one that I want to discuss, but we're going to wait until we grab Isol Cody back at the weekend because this story, trust me, has really cooked my goose. Now, that's a bad thing. It actually has griddled my grits or whatever you call it, but it's really pissed me off. But these two are a very, very close second. Now, Andrew Flint is waiting out in Siberia to come in, but before he does, I just want to play you something that watch, and then we'll discuss it.
Set. Ode Jordan already blasting his way around the bend. Pearson putting up a good challenge on the outside, but there's no doubt about it. What a display of sprinting from the young Briton. This is absolutely phenomenal. And he's just easing up. What's happened here? What has gone on there?
That was an absolute disaster, Phil Minchell. He has eased up far, far, far too early, and half the field swept past him before the finish line. This is going to be a lesson learned the very, very hard way after what was, for 150 metres, a masterful display of sprinting.
Andrew, after a masterful, I can think of some other way to start with master, display of sprinting for the first 100 metres, the 16-year-old. Now, here's what the UK media was spinning it as. Sky, of course, saying, British sprinter, 16, he's only a child, suffers disaster in, quotes, in race after he slows down at finish line and gets overtaken. So Jake Ode Jordan, they say 16. This was at the European Under Athletics Under 18 Championships. Now, one thing we should say is that the top three finishers in that race will all be drug tested. The top three will all be drug tested. Why would a sprinter who was clearly way better walk to the line, and even when he starts to look around, he doesn't speed up? He just starts to walk slower, Andrew. Why would he do that?
Well, it's not natural. And it's not even natural it's not unnatural in the way that we usually seem to discuss things on the show when, you can see motors open in cycling or whatever the hell it is. I mean, there was no sign of injury, certainly no talk of injury. He didn't look unduly disturbed. He didn't even look that bothered after the race when they were all looking around. I half expected some of the other runners perhaps might sort of come over to him and say, "Oh, what happened? Are you okay?" Because there was no way that was in any way taken by surprise. He didn't lose it. He chose not to finish properly. I mean, what on earth the reasons would be? I mean, I can only guess, but there were reasons why he didn't finish that obviously need to be found out. That's not a sporting disaster. It wasn't a masterclass. He was clearly 10 levels above everybody else for whatever reason in that field. So calling it a masterclass is silly. Calling it a disaster is silly because it's so blindingly obvious neither of those things. I generally can't work out what it would be because it's clearly something before the race. It's clearly something that has been said, or he's been threatened with something. Perhaps. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm being controversial here. Perhaps he wanted to avoid being tested by being in one of the top three places. Oh, sorry, that was silly of me. I shouldn't have said that. Mute. Muted.
Discussing it with one person in UK athletics, Andrew, who works at a rival club of his, she told me that it doesn't make sense because she said he's ranked top 200 in the world in men's right now. So they're saying he's 16 years of age. Okay, that's almost certainly true.
Oh, was he 16? Nobody mentioned that. I didn't know how old he was.
Yeah, so he's 16 years of age. And he told European Athletics afterwards in this interview that went online, it's all right. I mean, it is my fault, so I cannot be sad about anything but myself. We don't say it is what it is. It felt good. It was not the fastest run. But I felt good. For sure, it could have been sub 21, but that is all good though. I'm just out here. It's my first race on this meet. I just tried to get on my legs. Nothing hurts me or nothing like that. Now, this is a guy who blew away people in previous races, even in the States. 16-year-old. It does seem very, very strange, because if you look at it, you're a runner. As you slow up to the line, you can still sprint on. People can still go, oh, hold on. We've seen it. We've seen it in sprinters. We've seen it in runners when they just go, oh, I've been caught, and then they go again. But it was very, very dodgy. A couple of days' time, the Olympics are starting. The sprinters, male and female, the 100 meters, 200 to a lesser degree, and then the 400 as well is going to come into it. They're going to be the marquee events. But Andrew, this is the load of nonsense. I mean, if you see a 16-year-old doing this and how he's built and how the speed he has at that age, we should be asking questions rather than cheering on kids who never met.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like you say, at this age we're dealing with this. If you saw something like that in, I don't know, some World Championships final or Olympics qualifier or something, then perhaps it would be more obvious why there's more pressure on it. But I mean, okay, look, I will say one thing. If a speculation about wanting to avoid a test by, I don't know if this is how it's done or whether he just simply thought it would avoid the attention by finishing in the top 3 places or something, but it's a good thing that there is some level of scrutiny at this level, because there has to be. We know how young athletes are taken advantage of. So questions certainly need to be asked. I mean, I actually think this is one of those where it really should be a very simple and straightforward thing. Somebody obviously knows the answer, the young man himself, but who has warned him, put him up to this, pressured him? That's the real question that needs to be asked, because that's the real problem with youth sports nowadays. The pressures, natural pressures, personnel pressures that are placed on young athletes. This is what needs to be stamped out. But, will we ever... The coverage already that you've mentioned, Alan, there's so many things that are wrong with this, but the coverage you mentioned, the headlines, disaster, treating it as if it was an actual sporting matter, that is part of the problem. So the coverage like that, don't treat it like something it isn't. Treat it, it's a spade, call it a spade.
Yeah,
that's
look, Andrew, I will say that those things, I mean, if there's copy paste, for example, Sky News, Yahoo Sports, for example, it's all syndicated feeds, so they just copy paste what they put out. No one really cares, and they just go, oh yeah, disaster, what the hell, doesn't matter. Some black kid from England doesn't make a difference. That's the way they're looking at it. He'd actually put out a caption on Instagram stories, and I read this, and it was kind of embarrassing. I'm not going to publish it out because it's embarrassing. He said that he put out messages that he'd received, and one said things truly happen for a reason. We live and learn. You are still young. And another one said, God said, #not yet. So he finished the race at 22.12. He was running at a sub 21 pace for a child. So I think every Team GB, this in Slovakia, there needs to be serious questions asked and answered. Okay, would talk about Tadej Pogačar and his absolute brainless winning in the Tour de France. I mean, I blew up on X, on Twitter, because I thought this can't be real. But that's not what we're going to talk about next. You will like it. It's interesting. So just bear with us a moment, because I have to calm down for a moment, and then you'll see what I'm talking about right now.
Caught him good. Paul.
That's the one.
Right hand. This may be it. Right hand. And he's down for a third time.
The jab set up the left hook.
And now wave it off. There is a new king of violence, and his name is Jake Paul.
There's a new king of violence, and its name is Jake Paul. Now, that's what was said on DAZN Boxing. Bollocks for boxing, because it's not a boxing channel. Don't think it ever has been. Some of their coverage has been absolutely appalling. This is early days or late Roman Empire days kind of UFC of this screaming and roaring. It's so good, it's so good. Jake Paul, who is an awful excuse for a human being in many ways, beat a guy who had one previous pro fight and lost it by a knockout. A guy who's kind of a mixed martial arts fighter and bare knuckle fighter called Mike Perry, who's giving away quite a bit of height and weight to a fairly juiced up, steroided up Jake Paul. Now, Andrew, we've spoken with Jake Paul before, and we've spoken about how he has dragged boxing not just into the gutter, but down into the feckin' sewers underground. I mean, it's rancid what he does. So he beats up a guy who barely can hold up his hands, who's a fighter, and he takes a long time to do it. We have to remind people that the only person that Jake Paul has beaten or has lost to in his career is the only guy who actually could fight, the only guy who's actually a proper boxer. And even then, he's very, very much low card. And that's, of course, one of the Fury clan. Now, of course, Jake Paul was going to fight Mike Tyson. I think he's probably glad that Mike had a health issue boarding a plane. But, Andrew, this is atrocious looking stuff. I mean, he's fighting a guy who is, lighter, smaller, and less experienced. I mean, this has to be stopped.
Well, it makes a nice little knockout clip for 15 seconds with, like you say, the commentary. That's exactly what I was thinking. The sort of early days of wrestling, but the sort of Royal Rumble type commentary. I mean, even I don't watch all that many live bouts, but even I can tell that in itself is amateur. But look, it's all about the shares. It's all about the clicks. It's all about the get a 15-minute clip that you will share on Twitter and Facebook and get reshared. That's all that really they want to get out of these bouts. When Perry stands up and the referee asks him to walk a few steps and he has that little wobble, I always feel uncomfortable watching that, because I half expected him to say, "Well, I'm absolutely fine. I'm standing up," and oh god, it's a chaotic nonsense. It's not sport. It's not an art form. I know a lot of people will never watch boxing out of principle simply because they don't see it as sport. They see it as just two people trying to beat the crap out of each other, which in a sense, yes, they are trying to do that, but there is so much training and discipline and skill and athleticism, thought, planning behind it. This isn't any of that. This is just simply, it's also almost like UFC 1. I don't know if you remember, and there was I can't remember his name, but the enormous sort of 600-pound fella who comes in against some tiny, skinny American and just runs around the ring. And it was sort of, well, what are we doing here? What even is this? When you're starting a new promotion, as the UFC was in the early 90s, whenever it was, that's almost understandable in a way. You need to make something wild and wacky just to catch the attention. But in the end, if you want it to be a sport, you've got to make it a contest. When it's not a contest like that, and it's just a promotional platform, an ongoing, ridiculous promotional platform for Jake Paul, because that's what he is. He is very good at promoting himself, whether you agree with how he does it, the morals of what he does, the sort of avenues through which he does it, and the people he tramples all over in every sense to get there is one thing, but he is a promoter. But that's all it is. And it goes back to one of my biggest bugbears about sport. But like I said in the previous section, just call a spade and there's no problem with it. When you call a spade some sort of diamond-handled dagger or something, then what is wrong with you in the head? People will respect you if you say, look, this is only an exhibition. Boxing is a sport. It needs discipline and dedication. It must be regulated. So if you're going to watch this, it should have some education about what it is you're going to watch. Don't try and build it up as if, oh, wow, and a YouTuber is genuinely going to become a sporting star. That's where the blurred lines, a lot of people who are drawing in are people who are not long-term boxing fans. And those are the people who will think, oh, maybe this is boxing. And it's just
that's it. And I mean, when we're talking about Jake Paul, there's lots of lines involved, lines that he crossed in terms of with underage girls, lines involved that he, hoovers up on a table. he's a. I mean, it's hard to say a disgrace to boxing because he was going to fight Mike Tyson, who'd been jailed for rape, who'd been doping, doing drugs, beating people up outside the ring. So it's kind of like boxing. Boxing is kind of, it's not underselling itself. It's just basically sold out. When I see this, I saw a couple of clips, and again, one of the things that like shocked me, Forbes, for example, so Forbes magazine, and this is what I liked, and this is how no, let's not use that word. That will get
careful. You're not a Japanese Formula One driver.
There you go. Oh, I said it. The thing that is so ridiculous, so pathetic, so horrendous, so horrific, so absolutely pointless about all this absolute and utter garbage is in Forbes, so Forbes magazine, where they covered it. So Forbes covered this trash. Well, I mean, they've covered Biden, Trump, Clinton, you name it. Of course, trash. But it said Paul smoked by Perry via 6th-round TKO in the main event of the MVP show. Oddly enough, Paul's boxing experience was the key, as Perry looked about as amateurish as anyone who has ever fought in such a main event. Paul dropped Perry 3 times en route to the victory. Okay, and you're saying, I said like that. Perry, he didn't keep his hands up. He kept his hands. He refused to keep his hands up throughout the fight, and 8 shots throughout the evening. Now, there's a thing called white collar boxing, and this is what it is. Call it white collar boxing, call it exhibition shows, but by Jesus, professional boxing organizations sanctioning this. First of all, the weight difference was way too much. That was very, very clear from the start. And weight difference, when you have someone with a bit of experience, as Paul has, and training and juiced up with steroids and all that sort of crap. Fighting against a guy, okay, he's probably on steroids as well, but a guy who's like a lot lighter and hasn't experience, he's only fought one fight and got knocked out in it in professional boxing. Might be a bare knuckle fighter, but it's a different game. I would look at Conor McGregor will go in and dance all around Jake Paul and pull him through the ring. Floyd Mayweather would have his face cut to pieces. Mike Tyson 10 years ago would have just basically broken his jaw and knocked him out. I'd go in and beat him on a points decision. Easy. No problem. I could easily do it. Give me a month to train, I'll go in and knock him around the place. Because I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, it's like he's got his beard. First of all, you have to shave your beard. That's in boxing, you can't do that. Not the way he has it. Okay, he's a chinless wonder. He's a chinless whelp. He could be one of the royals, basically from inbreeding. He's got nothing there, like his brother Logan. But this clown, looking at Andrew, I mean, serious. I'm sorry, I'm getting worked up. It's a disgrace. I'm thinking, 103. I think all the fights I fought and what I put into the game and what I gave to the game, and then this. It's just Andrew. It's beyond ridiculous.
I mean, look, there's so many levels to this that are ridiculous. I'd add to that list the millions of people who lap it up. The sheer utter stupidity of looking at something as so blatantly, brazenly. It's almost Austin Powers ridiculous levels of nonsense. And they look at it and try to take it seriously. These are the idiots who are basically fueling the fire. These are the idiots who are lapping it up. I mean, look, maybe that's a little bit unfair because, like I said, this is the sort of show, is about the kindest way I could call it. It appeals to people who are probably not seasoned boxing fans. I mean, I'm stating the obvious here, I know, but so it's not so much the stupidity, but the naivety. Then perhaps that's a slightly more accurate way of putting it. Because look, Alex, if you see, when I'm bored during the day, I will occasionally look through my social media feeds, and if I see an interesting looking clip, I'll look at it. And for something like this, I can't, because it's too ridiculous. You see a 15-second clip of a comedian on a stand-up stage, fine, it can be ridiculous, but at least you know what it is, because they're selling it as a stand-up, they're selling it as comedy. When somebody tries to sell something as ridiculous as this, as something else, that's when it's sort of, to normal human functioning brains, it should come across as not entertaining, just utterly bizarre.
Exactly. And look, Vince McMahon, if he dreamt of this, or if he had a nightmare about this, he'd wake up and slap himself across the face and say, "What the hell, Vince? You don't do that. Don't." Vince might have thought of crazy storylines, but he would still. He respected the sport. He respected the profession. He wanted kayfabe. He tried to do it the way. That's why WWE is so big. But this gobshite, this clown, and yes, the people who are there who have basically, been licking paint off walls for far too long, or they've been smoking dope for too long, or they were dropped on their head way too often as babies, and they sit there on YouTube going, oh, man with big beard, good. It's like, okay, respect anyone who gets into the ring, but I mean, when you. Even in the
you scrambled your brain. Jake Paul has finally finished Alan Primetime War off. This is the knockout blow to our glorious age. We've been through decades of absolute nonsense, crime, everything, but it's Jake Paul that has finished you off. I was wondering what it was going to be, but this is it. This is what's tipped you over the edge.
I mean, I had Pogacar making up 3-4 minutes on a mountain on guys who are going well up a mountain, and he goes past them like they're going like they're.
It's incredible. It's inspired.
I don't know. With Jake Paul, I swear to Jesus, I would be like, first of all, he'd never fight someone like me because I've got boxing experience and I beat him. Number two, I don't have any interest for him because he'll lose and he'd be too fucking shit scared to do that. And three, it's not going to interest him fighting a guy who can fight because it's not going to sell. It's not going to sell for him. He'd be finished in the morning. When he lost to Tommy Fury, he was in shock. And Tommy Fury just went like, "Here, beat you, good luck." And Tommy's not a great fighter. He's a decent fighter, but he bet him well. And I actually think he could have put him away. But this kind of stuff, fakery in boxing. Pad out records, seeing Herbie Hyde beating up guys who he was well able to beat as he moved up to heavyweight, seeing him fight guys who like Conor Nelson, who were thinking, "Oh Jesus!" Like when we saw Conor Nelson come in, because we didn't have the internet at that time. Conor Nelson is a Canadian boxer coming in, and he's huge, massive, big man mountain, and just got flattened by Herbie Hyde. Thinking, okay, that's years later you look at it, you think, okay, he's fighting Purcell Davis and he's beaten him. But Andrew, on that, I'll stop. I will stop because I will lose my temper even further. But again, as I said, clowns like Jake Paul, should we just run out of boxing? Should we run out of work? Should just basically put into a fucking space rocket and fire it at the sun? Sorry, that's what I see. Just fire him into the sun. And follow it up with Pogacar. Fire him into the fucking sun.
All I'm going to say is this, Alan. You said that because that was the most ridiculous circumstance you could think of. I'll place a £100 bet right now in our lifetime that will actually happen. They will send someone on a space rocket and have a boxing match in weightlessness. So watch this. It'll happen.
I'll tell you what, on that, we're going to go back on Sunday, of course, Easter backwards. We have another very special guest as well. But where we need to send these people like Jake Paul, like Tadej Pogacar, like this young clown O'Day Jackson, we need to send them somewhere that they won't be able to come back from, somewhere that's deep, that's dark, that's black, that's super massive. This is Muse and Supermassive Black Hole back on Sunday night.